Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney. Before we get started, just want to let you know my new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., is available on the website, blendingfamily.com. And if you order it from the website, it will be autographed, or you can also go to Amazon and purchase it that way. Either way, the new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. is out. Now, on with the podcast.
Feeling intensely connected to a cause to start advocating for the plight of wolves and all the things that were happening with them, but just reclaiming my writing life and my creativity. So life broke open and things were not, personally working out as well as I would have liked to continue to serve my creativity. So trauma and things happened, and sudden divorce. And
welcome to another episode of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney, and you're probably saying, Tommy, this is my first time listening. What is Blending the Family all about? Well, I am glad you asked. So before I introduce who our guest is this week, Blending the Family, we can have topics that range from divorce or mental health or even what is a good wine on a first date. So I've got a variety of different topics, but along the lines, we're going to talk about family, we're going to talk about maybe, again, divorce, or something we're going to talk about that's near and dear to my heart today, which is pets and animals. And we're even going to go down a unique road when it comes to something called a vision quest. So my guest today is Denise Boehler, even though it's spelled Boehler, Denise Boehler. And you can find her where I found her on LinkedIn. And her handle on LinkedIn is Colorado Animal Advocate. That's Colorado Animal, ANIMAL, Advocate, ADVOCATE. So you can find Denise right there on LinkedIn. Topics we talk about today on this episode with Denise is her definition of being unstoppable. We talk about Vision Quest, and no, we're not talking about the movie. And we also go along talking about my ultimate goal is to go on my own ayahuasca trip, literally trip. And we also talk about, where is it? Oh, well, we talk about her advocacy for animals. So a little bit about Denise. After years of writing legal publications, she now spends days writing about animals in needs, a voice for their rights, of a world for their situation. She draws from the ground of ecopsychology, ECOPSYCHOLOGY. I'm not going to try and pronounce it, which allows her to infuse her work with the Buddhist philosophy of compassion and return to a holistic, more connective relationship with nature. Denise is one of those people that, like I said, I found her on LinkedIn and just fell in love with her content of being somebody who's a voice for our fur babies. Okay. In our household, we have three. We have 2 dogs and a cat, a dog and a cat. The dog, Louie, and a cat named Raja belong to my wife's nephew who's staying with us. And we have Otis, hashtag our dog Otis, Colorado. So I love the situation our household is in right now. I'm not a big cat person. However, Raj and I have become really good friends, and I will specifically spend time here in my home office. I am downstairs in a basement in one of the rooms with my office. I have a standing desk. Just need to throw that in. But Raja will come in the mornings when I'm reading or journaling, or at night. I know Raja needs some companionship, so I will purposely watch TV downstairs and just hang with Raja. And sometimes Otis will come down and hang with us as well. And it's a very unique dynamics. And I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but it's a very unique dynamics with Otis, because he is so used to being the only dog in the house. And now he has a companion with Louie, and the two of them, they're amicable. But the relationship Otis has with Raja is been very interesting from a third person point of view, in that Otis has never really dealt with a cat that will let him come to him. Does that make sense? So Raja and Otis get along. Like I said, Otis will come downstairs and hang with Raja and myself. And there was actually one day when Raja and Otis were laying down right by each other. And I wanted to take a picture, but they both looked at me and went their separate ways. So there you go. Let me take a quick sip of coffee. I am actually drinking, I don't know if I have much left. Good thing I've got a trip going back to Canada, but I'm a fan of Timmy Horton coffee, okay? I know for some reason my Canadian friends give it a bad rap, but I like it. There we go. All right. So, like I said, Denise Boehler is on this episode of the podcast. I'm very excited to share our conversation. How have you been? I know it's been a while since you and I have had an opportunity to hang with each other. I'm excited for not only you hearing this episode, we have new episodes coming to you. Recently, I was in Las Vegas visiting my son Connor, who plays junior hockey. If you're not familiar with junior hockey, it's not hard to explain when you're in that world, but it's hard to explain when you're not in that world. So essentially junior hockey is, think of another level of a travel sport. When I say a travel sport, meaning let's say your child plays volleyball, but they play competitive. So it's not necessarily at the school level, it's at maybe a club level, so they travel city, maybe state to state. My son is in California, and it's really funny. He loves the California lifestyle. As I said, I was recently in Vegas. The team had had 4 games there, playing 4 different teams, and unfortunately, my son is a goalie, and there's 4 goalies on the team. So for 4 games, each goalie got a game. So I only got to see him play 1 game. After almost 2 years of not seeing him play in person, it was really disappointing that I only got to see him play 1 game. However, after the game, he texted me and said, "Hey, can you?" After was hours after the game, he texted me and said, "Hey, can you come and pick me up?" And I said, "Cool." So he stayed with me at my hotel. Well, not my hotel. I don't own the hotel, but the hotel I was staying at. And it was awesome. It was like the old days. And what I mean by that is Connor and I, when he played travel hockey here in Colorado, whenever they had tournaments, out-of-state tournaments, he and I would go together, and that's how we bonded and stayed connected. So it was fun being in a hotel room, not trashing it, but, we boys will be boys, and we're not the cleanest. We're not necessarily, even though he was really good about hanging up his suit, but, like I said, boys will be boys. For me personally, it was awesome. I got to meet some of the parents. Like I said, this team that Connor plays for is in California. And so I finally got to not only attend 4 games and watch the team finally in person versus watching it on my laptop, but I got to meet some of the dads. I got to meet Bobby, Chris, and Chris, 2 dads, 2 different dads named Chris. So it was exciting for me because as much as of an introvert I am, it was a wonderful experience getting to meet the other parents, and so it was a good time. I had a wonderful time there in Vegas. The weather was somewhat chilly for Vegas. I don't think it hit a high of 60, so there you go. I'm excited too. I don't know if you can tell. Maybe you audiophiles can tell. I have a new microphone. My wife got me a new microphone. It is still a Yeti, a blue Yeti, but it's a micro one. It looks really nice in the home office. So I think we've talked way too much. I have talked way too much. Once again, on this episode of the podcast Blending the Family, we have Denise Boehler, and we're going to talk Vision Quest. We're going to talk about animals and how you can also help animals at the local level. There you go. All right, if this is your first time listening, the way I like to end each episode is because I saw an interview years ago with Terry Crews, and Terry Crews talked about how somebody else's success becomes his success, and we'll talk about that. Or you can just email me at tommy@blendingthefamily.com. That's tommy@blendingthefamily.com, and I will give you the lowdown where this tagline started. So there you go. And that's how we're going to end this. Oh, I have to be in a different screen. There we go. All right. As Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. From one of the articles you sent me, I want to ask you the first question, and that is, what is your definition of being unstoppable? I think that's a good way to start.
Oh, well, it means for me personally, having something you're so clear about that you are going to do in life and that you're committed to doing that despite the obstacles. And there will be many, if you are in it for the long term. You continue and you get back up after you fall down, and you persist and find resources regardless of the challenges. You incorporate the principles of patience, persistence, try to be professional and polite and all that good nonsense. But you keep going forward. Yeah. So you
What
don't
makes
give
you
up.
what makes you unstoppable?
I think just my commitment, long term, began when I was born, but was more redefined when I was in my young 40s, to writing on behalf of animals and serving them, helping them, being there and helping all the animals who came across my path. And it's been a rough journey. It's been just replete with challenges, and essentially it's just, I take breaks from it. I have to replenish. I fall down. I, get ripped down with despair like anybody in animal welfare, and get excited and feel overjoyed in the successes, like with my disabled dog. But in the end, I'm committed to it and know, that I'm in it for the rest of my days. So I would say the short term, it's not like it's easy and it's flawless. It's not. So it's messy.
Yeah.
Not always pretty.
Yeah. That's what life is all about. It's not always pretty, and it's messy, and
Yeah.
it's just a new day every day. And let me try and get some more cliches in.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I hate that one. Gosh, I hate
Hmm.
that one.
Oh, you can't save them all. Throw the axioms right out there.
One of the things that I've wanted to get you on this podcast is because of all the information you put out there on LinkedIn, because that's it for me. That's the only. Is that the only? That's the only social media I use. LinkedIn. Yeah,
Me
that's it.
too.
And you put out some. There are times a little bit of heart wrenching content, but it's your passion, it's your purpose. And so you were just talking about all these animals that have crossed your path. So where did the I guess where did your Dr. Doolittle experience start, and why animals?
Um, I really was just born with a connection to animals. Self-proclaimed animal loving, sensitive, and empath. Um, it's not something I could ever help. It's just I connected to them more readily. Developed my connection to and passion for people a little later in life. But I was always looking for animals in the forest when I was a little girl and terrifying my parents, wandering off by myself at 5 years old looking for the fox, or um, screaming at my dad in the back of the Oldsmobile, literally driving down Highway 64 and North Avenue. Sorry about that. Um, in Illinois, not to hit the raccoon that was about to cross the road. It it began really with trying to save animals from crossing the highway, and sometimes just jumping into harm's way to shoo a groundhog off of Route 20 on Lake Street, or just saving whoever I thought was in harm's way. So, um, and like any little girl, who's ever been in love with dogs and whatnot, I grew up in apartments, and when my dad gave me puppies that he, in his adult mind, knew better that I couldn't have because our landlady said no. I'd have them for a few months and grow attached and be in love, and then come home one day to find Pfeffer gone. And when I came home from school and was like, "Where's Pfeffer?" Well, he's with a police officer now, and it just rips your heart out. So it was deeply emotional, and I was always, looking for the animals to connect with ever since I was a little girl and help them out as best I could.
Do you have a do you have, do you have a do you have a favorite animal? I mean, again, your content. I mean, a lot of dogs, a lot of cats, but let's
Yeah.
take the dogs and cats out of it. What is your favorite non-domestic animal? How's that?
Non-domestic, it has to be wolves. Yeah. Yeah. It has to be wolves. So I
Why
studied
wolves?
them for I did all of my higher education in my adult life. I waited a while, so I studied about the wolf reintroduction program back in 2003, and then I went over to the Nez Perce reservation, and I sat for a few days on the reservation and listened to the wolves howl at night. Slept in a yurt, and really understood about where they fit within the Nez tribe culture, and um, advocated. I volunteered for Defenders of Wildlife for a while, and I advocated for Sarah Palin and the whole Alaska Board of Game to stop hunting them down with their helicopters and airplanes and do aerial shooting and those kinds of things. So it was really about wolves for a number of years, trying to help them, trying to advocate for them, trying to generate more awareness for their plight. Um, and if you're familiar with the seminal woman's Bible, Women Who Run with the Wolves, I completely could identify with the idea that wolves were as endangered and as wild as some of the more creative, empowered women would be or could be. So I definitely identified with them.
tell me about the time when you were in Ecuador. To me, that's fascinating what you did in Ecuador.
Yeah, well, it was not as long. I was going to go for 6 weeks, but I was newly divorced and completely unhinged and looking for some ground under my feet. My former, who's still my great friend, suggested I go volunteer somewhere. So I found a banana and cacao plantation outside of Quito in Ecuador, and it was called Hacienda Hambali. And the woman who was responsible for it, it was a family run plantation. They also had bananas there, and she had all these animals that were confiscated at the border when people try to smuggle in from the Galapagos, and customs and authorities would confiscate them and run them back to the sanctuary. So I signed up to pay for volunteer housing and to go clean the cages of monkeys and care for Guayaquil macaws. They're endangered, and she was breeding their beautiful green macaws there, and all the different monkeys, caimans. She was raising caimans, Galapagos tortoises, and whatnot. So the work was to care for them and enrich their environment, prepare their food in the morning, and just be there and serve them. So that was the plan. I was there for a few weeks. I wound up like 3.5, 4 weeks maybe. It was a little terrifying. I was the only gringa there, and I know a lot of Spanish, but the challenge of trying to use your Spanish with the coastal Guayaquil accent and understanding them was more challenging. So it was a bit more isolating. Plus, I was a little bit emotionally and psychologically just all over the map. So it was a kind of a lonely place to be. I wound up coming back home a couple weeks early, but it was fascinating, to be certain. And the people there were welcoming and wonderful. The llamas that she took in, I would walk them around the trail with. She had 4 intact dogs because in Latin cultures, if you're familiar, they don't spay and neuter their animals. They don't believe in it, the whole Catholicism thing. So you had to walk all the dogs separately. And the llamas, as we walked along the trail around the lake, would spit in my face. It was challenging. And the little rat terriers, they would attack the otters, and I'd have to go run into the bushes, and I'd have to go and grab the little Jack Russells off the otter. It was just terrifying, or get the iguana out of the mouths of the Cocker Spaniel. So I learned how to use a leash. I'm not someone who loves leashes for dogs, but I learned to keep the animals, the wild ones, safe. So it was quite a life experience. And then I got detained at the airport and nearly strip searched, and that was the most terrifying thing, when you envision yourself unlocked up abroad and not making it back. So that was
So
terrifying.
let's take a step back. So you just get newly divorced. You head to Ecuador. You've got llamas spitting at you, and then you are close to getting strip search at the airport. What a great way to start a divorce!
Yeah, yeah. It was a really transformative lifetime. That was the top end of it. So yeah, that was after almost dying
The
in the
strip search.
water. Uh, well, yes. When you see some 18-year-old guys with AK-47s and German Shepherds, and they brought you downstairs and they've called you out while you're waiting for your airplane at the airport in Quito, and you're by yourself. It was my first trip by my lonesome. I used to travel a lot with my former. It was my first international trip on my own, and it was cheap and it was accessible. So, and it was a way I could help animals and figure out some way to try and be in the world. But yeah, when they escorted me downstairs and they started going through my luggage, and I had all these feathers from the sanctuary that the parrots had shed in my luggage. And I thought, oh my God, they're gonna, bust me for that somehow, as though I'm taking out some endangered animal parts. And I used all my, Spanish that I could to explain that I was at a sanctuary and those were from, Los Papagayos, and they just kept saying, ma'am, step back, espera aquí, wait here. And I was just like, okay. So I was texting my former and literally peed my pants while I was standing there and going, I might not make it back. So I was trembling and starting to tear up and trying not to cry and become the hysterical little gringa. Eventually they let me go and I caught my plane, um, you know, um, found some dry undies and went, oh my God, I am never coming back. And as I remember when I went upstairs to be able to go into the boarding area, there was a sign that said, please come back to Ecuador. And I thought, never in my life. So it was, apparently I look like a drug mule.
Were you able to keep the feathers?
No, I just, you know what? I dumped them somewhere. I don't even remember, but I thought that was the deal. But turns out they were looking for drugs. There had been some type of soccer coach who had been busted the day or two before, and the Ecuadorian government was doing a crackdown on drugs coming in and out of the country. So being a single blonde white woman, well dressed and traveling alone, they automatically assumed I was a mule. So it was kind of like Orange is the New Black before Piper. So and I wasn't carrying any drugs. So yeah.
After all that, by the way, I don't have any drugs, but thanks
Yeah.
for asking.
Yes, but thank you for asking. Yes, no. No tengo las drogas. Yeah, exactly.
Sí, verdad.
Yeah, yes.
So after Ecuador, is this where you started to formulate a plan, so to speak, of taking your passion for animals and animal rescue and incorporate it with writing?
It really didn't start in Ecuador. It started more in my vision quest when I was at that hippie institute here in Europa. Um, I went through a life change about 13 years ago. Ecuador came a little bit later, but I had gone into my eco psychology program. I wanted to get my master's in eco psychology. Long story short, I'd spent at that time 20 years in law with my former, and I was a paralegal and accountant and secretary and business manager. And I essentially had decided I wanted to not be that person anymore and I wanted to go to law school. And I suck eggs when it comes to standardized testing. I had done, like I said, all my standardized or all of my higher education in my adult life. So my bachelor's came late in life. I graduated, summa cum laude from CU and Phi Beta Kappa and all that good stuff. They let me into the smart person society, which I was amused by. I'm like, what is this? What is this? They mean, that's what they think, but I didn't even know what it was. So, so I wanted to go to law school because I was tired of my life feeling subject to my former's review and approval, and I wanted my own law degree. So I decided to apply for my LSAT testing. Turns out my brain just does not conform to standardized testing, and my score, despite Kaplan's representations, never materialized. No matter how much I practiced and how many times I took their course. So I was like Saul Goodman. I stayed, at the 142, and it wasn't good enough to get into CU or University of Denver or even Wyoming. So I drafted appellate briefs to the law schools. I went and sat in, counselors' offices, like, could you please let me in? And they were like, we're sorry, but we care about that number. And so it was really hard after 20 years of serving a profession, that they said, no, you can't come here. So I decided I was going to go pursue my other passion, which was advocating for animals and trying to decrease animals from getting killed on the highways. We lose like 1 million animals daily on our nation's highways. It's roadkill. I don't use that term, but some people do because it diminishes them. I talk about roadside wildlife is the leading cause of death of a number of animals in our nation at this time. So I figured I'm a big believer because women do this, right? We externalize authority, and we feel like we need to go to outside institutions to get the approval. So I decided I was going to get accreditation from Naropa for an eco-psychology program, and my master's thesis was on how to make people more aware of animals trying to cross the roads and all that good stuff. So I studied that for about a year, and somewhere in between, in 2009, they made us, as part of our program, go on a vision quest out in eastern Utah. And long story short, all those fun little, 3 days, 3 nights after being out there with my group, my eco psychology cohort for 10 solid days, and then you fast for 3 days and nights if you've ever availed yourself of such things, found me not only feeling intensely connected to a cause to start advocating for the plight of wolves and all the things that were happening with them, but just reclaiming my writing life and my creativity. So life broke open, and things were not, personally working out as well as I would have liked to continue to serve my creativity. So trauma and things happened, and sudden divorce and all that good stuff. So for about a year, I went kind of downwards, if you will, and things just fell apart. But I was really clear within that my work from that moment on until the rest of my days was writing and finding ways to create more awareness for animals in our society. So, sorry, that's a long answer.
No, you're good. I want to go back to your vision quest because I am just fascinated when
Yeah.
this topic comes up, and I am also my wife looks at me like I'm nuts, but that's just a regular basis. But I want to go and I want to try ayahuasca. I want to go on that trip, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
Tell me more about your vision quest. About what was it? Did it help with some type of clarity? Was it something that um, again, somebody that hasn't experienced a vision quest, was it something that was in the back of their mind that all of a sudden came forward? You're talking about 3 days, so what is that experience?
Yeah. Um, well, it's complicated, but yet not really. And I've written a lot about it. I'm actually working on a book called Reclamation. Um, but it's borrowed from indigenous traditions. So Naropa, being a Buddhist-based institution, also borrows from wisdom traditions, including things as Vision Quest. So I couldn't not go. They threatened to kick me out of the program if I didn't go, and I was going to not go and going to quit the program until the day before. I said, no, I have to go. It was terrifying. So I would say anybody who goes there with a certain amount of cumulative material — I was 44 at the time, and I went there with some real blocks, some real questions, some real frustrations in life, some real struggles that I was grappling with personally at the time. I had just personally felt like I lost my intuition and my sense of even knowing what I wanted for dinner, and that my spirit was just drying up. And so I went personally with a lot of material, if you will. So there, not everybody has that experience. It was just where I was in life at the time. Some people would refer to it as a midlife crisis. I don't know if I would call it that. It was just what it was. We had 7 days. We were situated in our camp. We had elders from our program, and they were supposed to be versed in guiding us and conducting ceremonies. Like you'd have a little death ceremony you're supposed to do when you were out by yourself, things you wanted to say goodbye to in life, events, relationships, habit formations, and so forth. Me personally, I just had so much in terms of feeling like my voice was blocked, my creativity was dying. I was just not feeling like I was living my life purpose, and it was all frustrated. I had too much law that I'd been doing. My creativity was just nowhere. So after we set out an intention, because that's what you do the night before. You sit in circle. You're always sitting in circle in council practice, right? Like the indigenous traditions where they're all sitting in circles. And I would, come up with an intention, and my intention was, to figure out what's blocking me. And when I went out, I had chosen my solo spot. We all got to do that. And you're fasting. You can only have tea and water. You're by yourself, and you can only have your journal. You can't read. You can't have any music, no entertainment, no books, no nothing. You're by yourself, day and night. You're amusing yourself. I was playing in the Dolores Creek with the fishes. I was dancing under the moonlight. I was, writing. I was crawling all over. I had chosen a solo spot that had boulders all over it. I had a huge boulder that bordered the creek, and I called that like that was my block, my thing that I couldn't see through. And then I had my creativity rock, which had all kinds of craters in it, and I would crawl on top of it, and I would feel, like whatever it was, that you just have these different experiences. The lizards start to become little creatures that you connect with. I had little blue ancestral lizards that I was talking with, and canyon wrens, and your soul starts to slow down to the rhythm of the trees and the breeze that flows through. It's intensely quiet. You don't even hear the screams of your fellow eco-psychology cohort. And no one can hear the screams. You don't hear them crying. You don't hear them singing. You're just by yourself. Everybody's separated. And you have a little partner that looks out on you. Like every 12 hours, you're supposed to check in. You have a meeting point where you leave a message in some kind of, with stones or sticks or sand or something, that says I'm okay. And you agree to go to that site at designated times, to just for safety purposes let your partner know that you're still alive and just working through things. So you take all these things with you. You perform all these different ceremonies. I won't go into the depths of the details of what I was doing, but suffice to say,
Can you give an example? Can you give an
uh,
example, Denise, of like a ceremony?
well, so like a death ceremony, for instance, is you're invited to collect different rocks out there and create cairns and create a circle and have and have within the circle symbols of the things you want to let go of. And, for me personally, it was like my relationship with my bipolar brother, which was incredibly harmful. Or a really early relationship that I had with my former partner, who was 25 years older and was intensely destructive and exploitive. So you bring all these things that have harmed you in life, because if you walk long enough on this earth, there are things that harm you in life and we're affected by, and they constitute our character, right? So you really get a chance to, gather these symbols, whether it's of little pieces of sage or there's twigs, or maybe even they're physical things like a pendant or a ring or something, and you bring them into the circle, and you spend however much time you need to with each one, and you really go through the conversation. You write it down and you verbalize it, but it's all to yourself. It's in the witness of there's these lands out there, the ancestral lands, the canyon lands. They're red rocks, so they kind of overlook. So you feel like there's these ancestral energies that are there and present with you as you let them go. And you make your peace with them. There's a lot of crying, there's some anguish, there's a lot of releasing. It's designed to release some really harmful, destructive things in your life, and it's a clearing so that you can find a way to allow them to be with you, and um and yet not control your life, but they just become this quieter part of you, and there's a wisdom part that settles in. And at the end of your ceremony, when you're done and you've made your peace with it, that becomes part of your time in your vision quest. Um, so that was like probably the last night that I was in my time, my solo spot, and then you stay up the last night. And as I was sitting down by the creek, and I was next to the barrier rock, is what I called it. Actually, I misspoke earlier. Um, and I was thinking about wolves, and like I mentioned before, Sarah Palin, in her infinite wisdom, was following the wishes of the Alaska Board of Game and having wolves gunned down. Um, and it was just excruciating. It was killing me, because the service work that I did with defenders was to try to educate people on the plight of wolves and the way they were being run down for 50 miles with these airplanes. And then when they were too exhausted to go any farther, pilots would get out and shoot them where they stood. And I was so intensely involved in that argument and fight on their behalf, and making pleas to the Board of Game, writing them letters, making phone calls, doing research, connecting with other wolf lovers in Alaska, just doing all this. I was just intensely involved with it. So by the time I was on my vision quest and I was sitting there in my solo spot that night, it just came to me that my own purpose at that time, was to go and do everything that I could to try and help the wolves and be their voice and advocate for them and write in the best voice possible. Songs come forth. There's a popular Buddhist song or chant you might or might not be familiar with. It's an Om Namah Shivaya, and that just kept pouring forth, and you get into a little bit of a different state of mind, a chanting, if you will, and it went on for a long time. But the clarity, there's a washing over of you that can kind of, if you're open to it and it's the right time in life, it absolutely, if you invite it in, it can happen, and it comes through you, and it's a very powerful thing. It's not painful. It's just it's sacred, and you feel empowered with some of the energy of some of the ancestral spirits who've always, fought for all the living, beautiful creatures on this earth well before us. and you feel aligned with it. And so, yeah, I left I broke my camp at whatever hour, I think it was 6 a.m., and packed up my little tarp in my backpack. And when I was walking down the trail, I walked past one of my friends in my eco psychology cohort, and she was she was standing in the sunrise singing like a beautiful little bird. I still remember her, Trillia. And I gave a little bow to her, and then I walked quietly back to our base camp, which was a mile away. And they give you guacamole with mayonnaise mixed in. It's like a gentle thing for your stomach after fasting for 3 days. And we just all, kind of came back after our special time. Everybody's was different, but that was what mine was. So a little bit. So.
I want to take a quick break just to remind you that my new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., is available on the website, blendingthefamily.com. And if you order it from the website, it will be autographed. Or you can go to Amazon and also purchase the book. Again, the name of that book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Now, let's get back to our guest. Shall we? Let's. Denise, thank you so much for sharing that. I am when you're talking about the wolves, I have a standing desk, and I'm standing here and I'm like trying to hold it in because that is just not to get political, but I've never been a fan of Sarah Palin, and that just proves
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
A couple of things. When you're talking about we all have material, is material your way of saying we all have baggage?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Our human struggles, our way of being on the planet. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for allowing me to talk about that. I appreciate that.
Oh, it was. Oh, no, that's why we're here. I am. Like I said, I have this dream because as one of my favorite motivational speakers would say, Zig Ziglar, he would say, it's a dream until you write it down and put a date on it. So I don't know when and if I'll ever take my vision quest, but like I said, Denise, I've listened to other podcasts where they talk about the ayahuasca trip, and I'm just like I know there's the opportunity to be throwing up, but it's something that I just think mentally it's something I just one day will have to do. Um,
Why do you feel like you want to do it? Is what I would say.
why? Oh
Yeah.
gosh, how long do we have? Very similar to what you're talking about. It's just it, probably I have some mental blockage as well,
Hmm.
and just being able to get through that wall, to get through and just say, I feel there are times where, and again, it's a cliche word, and I know Simon Sinek uses a lot, but our purpose, our why, and I feel I'm there, but then there are other times where I'm like, I think I'm on the right path, and then I see like a U-shaped path, and I'm like, oh, am I supposed to go left? Am I supposed to go right, or do I create a new path? So there are just times where in my mind it's going and just, and I try to do meditation. I love meditation. um, I will take the time, especially when I'm home, not traveling for the day job. I will take time and just sit and just go through a meditation, and I end up taking a nap. And maybe that's what I need at the time is
Hmm.
some relaxation. But to answer your question, Denise, I just again feel, um, after hearing other people talking about their experience, And even though they talk about how sick they got, that is the least bit of it. It's about finding some clarity. Is it guaranteed I'm going to find, my almighty purpose? Maybe, maybe not. But it's something, an opportunity I want to experience,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I would throw out a huge caution. It's yeah. I was not prepared for my life to completely fall apart um, after my vision quest. I would say choose your guides carefully. Things happen in ways that you.
Hold on. Hold on. I want to take a step back. Sorry to interrupt. All right, so you're saying, what are you saying, that because of that vision quest things went downhill, or
Not,
what?
I wouldn't say downhill. I would say that my life completely blew apart in ways I wasn't prepared for when I signed up for it. Um, I needed to go because it was I felt deep inside that it was something that I needed to do. That I was just not looking at a certain part of my life that was not working for me anymore and wasn't serving me and my higher purpose. And I'm not trying to be flaky woo woo about it. I was put on this earth to take care of and speak on behalf of animals. And I wasn't doing that in my best voice. I was frustrated, and personal dynamics aside, it was just not happening for me. Um, so I wasn't, I wasn't prepared for my life to completely fall apart. Um, because I had made some decisions in the middle of, not in the middle of, but towards the end, that I just could not go back to the life that I had created. Um, and it was just so powerfully clear to me after that experience. And I did not have the benefit, I will say, of the people around me who were supposed to be like the leaders, the ancestral leaders in the program, the elders and so forth, to slow it all down. And if you listen to anybody like Lee Harris, he's an energy intuitive, one of my very favorite guys. He's British and lives in California now with his husband. But anyway, talks about spiritual awakenings and the speed at which they can transform your life. And mine happened within those 3 days. Like, I did not realize that was going to happen for me. So when I talk about a lot of material, I mean, I had at 44 accumulated a career, a huge amount of loss in my 20s, and both my parents, a young marriage, a move from my family home in Chicago to out here to Colorado, pioneering a life without running water for 10 years. All of it, I had had so many losses and changes that I'd already gone through. There was a lot to have gone and worked through. So sudden decisions at the end of all that, life would have turned out, I think, the same way. I would have gotten remarried and found, um, my husband, my science husband, who's very suited to the personality of me and is secure enough in himself to let me be me and love animals alongside me, and we don't have those struggles. So it all worked out. It was 4 excruciating years of pain after that, though. Before that, before we found each other. But the point is, choose your programs and your people carefully, because vision quests are not to be tampered with. They're really not. And there's something that I have. I have a deep amount of not resentment for, but just when people talk about going on them, like at Naropa, I always say they destroyed my life and it was up to me to put it back together. They made me go on that vision quest because I wanted to complete my program, and I'm not a quitter, and I wanted my master's, so I was forced to go. There was a catalyst involved I won't go into, but a man child who was also part of that, and that's part of what comes in. That's part of what comes in. Everything comes in on these vision quests. That's what I'm saying. Your soul is open. And all these things, and they're happening, and you're like in this cauldron, and this alchemical, if you know any of James Hillman's work, The Veil of Soul Making. They're absolutely, they can be at the right time in life and the right setting, transformative in such a way that you just can't always be prepared. And my poor former was not prepared either. And I will always regret that I broke his heart as much as I did. And as I said, we've remained friends and honor our own separate paths. But it was a tough time, and those are challenging experiences. So you have to be prepared and choose carefully. They are not to be taken lightly. There's a reason why, indigenous traditions covet them and protect them and don't speak about them as intimately as I might have even revealed. So, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but I go back to, you have a beautiful story. I mean, it's sure, like you said, if you'd taken that piece out, would you've gotten to the same ending point where you are now? Who knows? But
Probably not.
there are times where we have to go on those. Yeah, there are times where we have to go on those journeys and discover. I mean, as somebody who's gone through marriage and divorce and remarriage,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd be the person I am today without,
Yeah.
my first marriage, and having a son, and now having two bonus daughters, and this and that and that, and so we all have our journeys, and you and I'm just standing here just listening and going, oh my god, this is so cool. And I hope you do. I hope you do create a book out of this, because I will be the first not only to buy it, but to make sure I get it autographed, because I think you've got a great story. I mean, your when it comes to the writing piece, I'm going to rely on your expertise, but I still think that it's a beautiful story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. It's
Who knew today you were going to talk about it today, Denise?
I thought you were going to ask me about rescue dogs.
Well, that's what I want to turn to now. Is let's talk about that passion of yours of the rescuing, and putting a lot of information out about how it's very frustrating when we say, for example, dogs are man's best friends, but we treat them like crap. I was reading an article, and I can't remember. It was out of the UK, and it was something that, because my wife does a lot of volunteer work, and one of the places we volunteer, she drags me with, and I have no problem going with her, is the Weld County here in Colorado, the Weld County Food Bank.
Uh-huh.
And one of this article I was reading about in the UK, and I was not aware of this, was in the UK food banks, they also have a section for dogs and cats. And I was like,
that's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm like, all right,
good for them.
What do we need to do to encourage more of that here in the good old States? So what can we do? What can we do today? What can a listener do today to help our voiceless best friends, our dog? And I will admit, I heard a cat in your house. I'm more of a dog fan, so it's either, growing up in Chicago, Denise, you're either a Cub fan or a White Sox fan. I'm a diehard Cub fan. I'm a diehard dog fan. Yep. So how can we start helping more?
Yeah. Well, we have 4 rescue cats because we live on acreage and there's mice here, so, there's that. Um, so how Citizen Jane can help, there's so many different ways. We all feel as though we need to take in a dog, or, into our home in order to be of the ultimate help, and that's just not true. Um, there are so many different ways I donate. I have a pack of we have a pack of 3, one of which is severely disabled. He's my cruelty survivor from the Rio Grande Valley. Um, so he requires a lot of care, bladder expressions 4 times a day and so forth. So I can't take in any more dogs right now. But there's a lot of people that feel that if they can't adopt a dog, they can't help, and that's just not true. As you know, probably from my posts, I volunteer at one of my local shelters, which I'm presently switching over to a different local shelter. um, you can volunteer to go get those dogs out. Enrichment is a thing. It's a fancy term in the shelter world, but getting them out of their kennels, getting them out for a walk, getting them bodily touch, a little oxytocin goes a long way. I bring them chewables. I get them Nubs treats at Costco or Greenies. I give them training treats and try to teach them to be better canine citizens on the leash. Some of the dogs that I take out, like Jackson, he's a little older guy at the shelter down below in Boulder. He wanted to just sit on my lap and get a whole body massage by the creek last week, and just get treats and love, and just interacting and
Mm,
seeing them, touching them. Some of the dogs, like the Huskies, they want to go romp and play and just feel free to run in the play yard, and playing fetch with them, or just watching them jumping around, but being with them and sharing that space. So volunteering, um, the shelters, as you probably are aware, across the nation are overflowing as people are struggling, and they're tossing dogs, and their shelters have become dumping grounds, and they're horrible places.
right.
Um, People feel like a dog is inconvenient or something. So it's become a nightmare right now for dogs. And so going and helping them to feel better while they're in that state of flux is keeping them included, so they feel like they're part of society. And they're dealing with a wide variety of emotions and psychological states, everything from disorientation to stress to confusion to abandonment. They've got their neighbor next door howling or barking or whining, and that's stressful. So getting them out, volunteering is huge. That's a big deal. And I donate probably much more than I need to, to my husband's dismay. But I do, donate to my favorite rescues. Today is Colorado Gives Day, and there's an incentive program that Colorado matches, for some of the rescues. So donating to your favorite rescues. There's also fostering, because fostering absolutely saves a dog's life. It gives them a safe place to land. And some of these more underserved shelters in the southern states, there's 5 states responsible for killing half our nation's animals, and Texas being close by to Colorado. So bringing a dog into your home and fostering it for a while. A lot of people say, I couldn't deal with that heartbreak of saying goodbye, and I'm always hearing about foster fail. You're their safe landing place, and you are literally the link between life and death for that dog in these underserved shelters. So fostering is so key to getting them out of those shelters alive. And of course, the ultimate, adopting, taking care of the life that's already here before we go and order up more, like sushi at a favorite Japanese restaurant. But taking care of the dogs here, like I think you have Otis, wasn't it? Memory serves, as your rescue dog.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He is my wing dog. He was our COVID dog, which was really funny at the time because my wife and one of my daughters said, "Hey, they showed me a picture of Otis, who, ironically, from what we were told, came from Texas." So I'm very, very grateful that my wife and daughter nudged me to be part of this. But it was during COVID. The company I worked for at the time, I wasn't traveling, and I said, "This isn't going to be fair. We're going to get a dog. Who's going to take care of him? If I go back on the road," which I ultimately did. And my wife and daughter are like, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." And we did. We did figure it out, and I
Mhm.
am very, very grateful. I mean, we have just a little side note right now, Denise. We have my wife's nephew living with us with his dog, so I get double the pleasure. Even though
Yay.
Otis, who is very similar to me, being an only child, doesn't like having to share the house, but and I'm surprised because they're both right now upstairs, um, quiet. And but they're I think Otis is finally coming around.
Hmm.
It's only been a few months, but he's finally coming around to realize, hey, Louis, I like to call him his cousin. He and Louis are slowly getting along, but yeah. So Otis is our COVID dog, our rescue dog, and it was funny. I did the DNA test on him because
Cool.
people would come up to us saying, what is he? And all I could say was, well, he is a dog.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Um, I told one lady, and I said, well, he's a purebred Heinz 57 mix,
Uh-huh.
and she didn't get the joke.
Uh-huh.
Her husband says, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Well, I'm Googling Heinz 57 breeds." And he looks at me and I look at him and I'm like, I'm not going to mention the color of her hair, okay?
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
I so it turns out Otis he is like 30 something odd percent of uh, pit bull terrier mix, another 30 something percent of husky or Siberian husky, which makes sense because he loves, being here in Colorado. He loves our snow, he loves the cold. And then the remainder is Australian Shepherd, Border Collie, that herding type mix, which makes sense because when we're at the dog park, Denise, he loves to herd the other dogs.
Yeah, yeah. He sounds just like a fabulous dog. How old is he?
He will be 3. His birthday we determine is we tried to work our way back. So February 14th, we figured that is his birthday. Because when we got him, he was 5 months,
Oh,
and we
okay.
got him in May of, what was that, 2019?
Hmm.
2019, yeah. So we figured, Valentine's Day is a good day to celebrate the birthday of your dog.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And thank you for rescuing him.
Yeah.
I just Texas is a rough state for dogs, as you know, and it's just you were his lifeline. So thank you to you and your wife, and he'll get along with the other dogs. They adjust, they work around each other. So our three come from the south, and yeah,
Yeah.
good job for Otis, and he'll get along with his cousin.
Well, let me ask you. Yes. Yes, eventually, but that's okay. Let me ask you this before I let you go, Denise. Are there, and you mentioned, your local shelters, but are there anything national as well that the listeners can do as far as uh, donate money wise? Any recommendations there, or are you saying, or recommending, I should say, keep it local?
I would say keep it local. I mean, you're probably aware of Best Friends Animal Society. They're leading the no kill movement and they're doing phenomenal things, but By and large, shelters are necessary. I'm not a great fan because dogs are just so subject to a lot of things. And so I love supporting rescues, local rescues that you might be familiar with. There's Soul Dog here in Colorado. There's a Taskies Blue Husky, which is a breed specific rescue. Um, our own disabled Texas dog came from the Rio Grande Valley through Redfern Animal Rescue in Denver. There's a number of great rescues. There's Four Paws for Life. I think they're up by you in Fort Collins. Supporting local rescues, foster-based rescues, really they're the amalgamation, if you will, of the millennials and Gen Zs getting together and say we can and will do this differently. Dogs get to be in foster homes where they can display more of their disposition and feel more comfortable. So supporting them, I think for me personally has been where it's at. If you wanted to go outside the borders of your state, there's a number of places in Texas. I've got like Central Texas Refugees I support. San Antonio Pets Alive, they pull a lot of the dogs out of, dear God help me, the San Antonio Animal Control Services, where a lot of dogs by the dozens are losing their life every week to population. No other reason other than they don't have room for them. So helping the dogs get out of those places alive through the different rescues, to me is where I'd like to put my resources. And Best Friends is wonderful to support nationwide because they really have done just tremendous amount of work. Julie Castle is a force. I would love to meet her. And there's the no kill movement, No Kill Colorado here. I work with David Smith. He's the founder of it. And he advocates, for the shelters to work more with rescues to get the dogs out alive, regardless of a behavioral issue, because shelters will put an animal down if they find them somehow, quote unquote, untreatable. And that's just not the case. It's a matter of training quite often. So yeah, I'm sorry, I could go on. I got off topic a little bit. The ones that are local, I think, are important to support. Yeah. I apologize.
That's all good.
You got me talking about restaurants, so I'm sorry. You asked for it.
I did.
Coffee. I will.
And I deserve it.
I will buy you coffee. I'll drive to Greeley and get you a nice coffee soon. We'll talk more about Vision Quests.
Ziggy's. That's who I support is Ziggy's.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yes.
I know Ziggy's.
I just want to say I love your writing.
Well, thank you.
I love your heart.
Thanks.
I am so grateful that we've connected, and I look forward to making a quest to see you in person. And if you're up to it, I'm a hugger. So
Always. Yes.
how can cool? How can our listeners get a hold of you? And I know you're on Medium. I know you have the Elephant Journal. So how can the listeners find you?
So probably LinkedIn, like you, that's my only social media outlet right now, for sanity and preservation of democracy. I was on Instagram and wound up with 2 rescue dogs as a result, so I limit my exposure now. So LinkedIn, I did have a website, but I'm terrible at driving traffic to it, so I took it down. Elephant Journal has a way to message me just directly. You can just send me a direct message that way, or just through, like I said, through LinkedIn is probably the other way. Medium is probably the tertiary choice there. So, yeah.
Oh, good word. Good
Yeah.
word.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, next time you want to, you find yourself outside a boulder and tooling up, outside the mountains. I am in an old town site. So yeah, hanging out with the moose and my dog. So
Well,
there was a
I
big bull
love
moose.
that's one thing I love
Bull
about
moose.
going through.
Yeah,
That's what you see in Boulder. You see
yeah,
moose and dogs. Love it.
yeah, yeah. Most massive bull moose with the most majestic set of antlers walked through the valley with his female the other day, and our pit bull lab mutt Charlie just about lost his stomach. He could not believe it. So thank God we have a fence around the house. so so yes,
Well, Denise Boehler, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel that at times when that word can be overused, but I do sincerely mean it. I mean, I loved hearing all about your vision quest, and also again hearing your plea for we humans to treat God's creatures a little bit better.
thank you. Thanks for making this space. This was a fun opportunity. So thank you, Tommy. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon.